Good afternoon. Welcome to the beginning of an exhibit here at Yale Divinity School by the artist Bruce Gillespie. Our artist, unfortunately, was involved in an accident this morning. A dog bit him. So he is at the ER having his wounds addressed. He's going to be fine, but when you're bit like that, you don't really have a choice. Simply have to go through all the shots, etc., the tetanus shots. So we will bring Bruce back probably next week, and we had something we wanted to do just with Bruce, but we'll go ahead. We have food, and you're all here, and we didn't know this until basically noon. So we'll go ahead. We just have a short program. My name's Greg Sterling. I'm the dean of the school. There's a great deal written about creativity. For those of us who work with a biblical frame of reference, it's intriguing to remember that the creation story claims that we are created in the imago Dei. This is not accidental. One aspect of being created in God's image is the human capacity to create. This capacity exists in all humans. Even, I know some of you will find this hard to believe, even scholars. We typically celebrate it with artists and inventors, but it is present in all. Nearly 50 years ago, Sam Goldenberg, who at that time taught special education at the Danbury Regional Center, observed the creative capacities of one of his students, Bruce Gillespie. When Bruce was born with Down syndrome, the officials at the hospital told his parents they could simply leave him at the hospital and he would be institutionalized. His parents chose to take him home and to raise him, and we're grateful they did. While Down syndrome limits a person's capacities, it does not negate the presence of the imago Dei. Sam was the first to see this evidence in Bruce's creative capacities, but he's by no means the last. We experience an artist's creativity in the way in which she or he presents something familiar in an unfamiliar mode that makes us rethink what we consider familiar. The paintings that frame this exhibit are Bruce's drawings of Moses with the 2 tablets of stone on Mount Sinai. And you've got a picture of one just above me. You might have noticed that Bruce has depicted what in Hebrew is called the 10 words, what we call the 10 commandments, as musical notes. And I found that intriguing. Now, some might say, Bruce doesn't have the capacity to write words, so this is a substitute. Well, that's true enough. But why choose musical notes? You know, had it been me, I'd have probably just made a little line, a little scribble there to signify the words. When I first looked at this, my initial reaction was to think of the year I lived in Jerusalem and worshiped at a Jewish shul and would go to the synagogue and hear the cantor recite the Torah. Every Jewish girl and every Jewish boy goes through a bat mitzvah or a bar mitzvah, and in order to do that, they have to learn how to cantillate the biblical text. So in Jewish circles, the text is not read, it is sung. And that's how you experience it in a synagogue. I don't know if Bruce has ever been in a synagogue or not, but this painting made me think of the times that I've been in a Jewish synagogue and heard the Hebrew text sung rather than read. Now, I'm also a biblical scholar, so this may be a little odd for you, but I thought about it a little more and I had a second reaction. When we think of Hebrew in what we call the square Aramaic script. So if you've ever seen a Hebrew Bible, the script that you see printed is called the square Aramaic script. But Old Hebrew has a very different appearance, almost a stick-like, if I can use that phrase, appearance. So if you've ever seen the Siloam inscription, or if you've ever looked at Dead Sea Scrolls and seen the sacred name for God printed in Old Hebrew characters, you know what I'm talking about. The musical notes in Bruce's drawing remind me of the old, ancient Hebrew script. And as I thought about it, that's what it invokes within me. All of this is a way to say that Bruce's drawing of the tablets makes me realize that the biblical text is experienced in multiple ways by different people. It neither appears in the same form, nor is received via the same venue by all peoples. And I see that in this particular painting. It is the unfamiliar depiction of the familiar that draws me to Bruce's art. His depictions of the individual commands are also creative. He draws the ancient Hebrew apodictic law in a modern scene. Both are familiar, but the juxtaposition of the two is creative. Now, everyone who's at school here today will look at his depiction of the fourth commandment and say, I wish I were there. This is the rest on the Sabbath. Just if you haven't seen it, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about as soon as you see it. I also really like the depiction of the fifth commandment, because when I read the fifth commandment, honor your father and mother, I think about the need to care for aging parents. That's what it means in the Hebrew Bible. But Bruce's depiction reminds me of scenes from my childhood, going into my parents' bedroom with a tray in my hands. It reminds me of mornings when my own children on Mother's Day or Father's Day would get up early. And it reminds me of what I sometimes do when I'm on my best behavior on Mother's Day for my wife. But all of that is evoked in a way through his drawings that reminds us of how important these relationships are. His art is an invitation for us to use our own imaginations. In other words, for us to exercise the imago Dei within us. I want to express a very special word of appreciation to a couple people for this exhibit. I want to begin with Sam Goldenberg, Bruce's former teacher and lifelong friend, for introducing Bruce's art to us. He brought it and showed it to me, and I showed it to Tom Krattenmaker, the director of communications, and that's how this all started. But Sam has not only been an untiring supporter of Bruce, he has been a staunch supporter of all who struggle with Down syndrome. Last month, March, which is Down Syndrome Month, he had a special music and art event at the Knights of Columbus Museum to educate the public about people with Down syndrome. I want to ask you to join me in a very warm round of applause to Sam, not only for this exhibit, and not only for his support of Bruce, which deserves a round of applause all by itself, but even for his larger efforts over many years to support individuals with Down syndrome. Sam, thank you. I also would like to recognize Tom Krattenmaker and the Walls Committee here at the Divinity School for all of their work, and Lynn Haversat for helping to put things together for the reception. Now at this point, I was going to say some special words about Bruce and to thank him, and we have a Marquand cross. So this is the cross that's on top of the chapel, and it has a distinctive shape. So we are going to give this to Bruce probably next week when he's able to make it here and make him an honorary member of our divinity school by giving this to him. Instead, I'm going to have to ask you today just to watch the video about Bruce's life. And then I want to invite you to exercise your Imago Dei and enjoy his art and enjoy one another's company with a little bit of refreshment after this video. Thank you for coming.
Bruce Gillespie was born on June 30th, 1952 in Danbury, Connecticut. When he was born, his parents, Robert and Gladys Gillespie, were told that he had a genetic disorder, Down syndrome. In an interview, Mr. Gillespie recalled that, "We were told by doctors that Bruce would always be a non-entity. He would never be able to do anything for himself. Both me and Gladys were shocked, but we felt the only thing we could do was to take him home and proceed as if nothing was wrong with him." From a very early age, Bruce loved joy, and his parents tried to nourish it. We felt this is what he is happy at, this thing of beauty. That's what he is trying to get out. It's beauty. And the only way he can express himself is not through voice, but through the actual working of the drawings. I first met Bruce in 1974 when he was a student of mine at the Danbury Regional Center. At the time, I directed the 406 Coffee Shop, which provided work experience for special education students. Bruce was one of our waiters. Bruce always loved the work, especially socializing with customers. I did notice, however, that he often disappeared into a back room where he would be found drawing. At this time, the subjects he drew were basically ghosts and monsters, but they were always done with a sense of humor and creativity. While Bruce was my student, we had started working on a new project, illustrating a children's Bible. However, in 1978, his family moved to Florida and I lost contact with Bruce. I'd given up hope of ever making contact with him again. But then one day, in 2015, a friend of mine, Kathy Loomis, was visiting her mother at Almost Home, an adult daycare facility in Danbury. She walked into the daycare and saw countless drawings that were posted on the walls that were in the same style that Bruce would draw. She inquired of the management and discovered that Bruce was attending the daycare facility. Kathy got in touch with me, and I traveled to meet up with Bruce for the first time in 35 years. I drove to Danbury, walked into a room, and saw Bruce sitting at a table drawing. It had been 35 years since I had last seen Bruce. But he looked up to me and said, "Hi, buddy." The daycare told me that Bruce gets off the bus, goes to his table, and draws right up to the moment that he has to leave. They even have to bribe him to eat lunch. He sits there all day and draws. Bruce's artwork had never been exhibited before 2016. I met with the Art Council of New Haven, Connecticut in November of that year, and they decided that his drawings were worthy of an exhibit. In the 35 years that I hadn't seen Bruce, I had saved many of his drawings, including 2 chapters of the Children's Bible, the Creation and the 10 Commandments. For the chapter, the Creation, I had read the biblical passage for Bruce, and he interpreted them as only he could. I showed the 14 drawings to Peter Sonsky of the Knights of Columbus Museum in New Haven, Connecticut, who was so impressed with the drawings that he had them featured in a special exhibit in 2017. He also made Bruce the museum's resident artist. The drawings are best described by Mother Miriam Benedict, a cloistered nun of Regina Laudis in Bethlehem, Connecticut, who commented, "His drawings are alive, vibrant with movement and color, consistent. Despite his handicap, he has the gift of intuitively grasping the essence of his subject and of being able to express it in his art." The second chapter that I had saved of the Children's Bible was the 10 Commandments. To create each illustration, I discussed each commandment with Bruce. Once I felt he understood the commandment, I would just let Bruce use his imagination to create the drawing. There is an amazing continuity in the drawings. Bruce portrays a mother, father, and baby in his depiction of the commandment. There's a sense of humor that also highlights all of the drawings, particularly with the baby. For the commandment, "Remember the Sabbath day," Bruce has the baby with his hands behind his back, relaxing. For the commandment, "You shall not steal," the baby has his hands up over his head as if being robbed. In Bruce's amazing portrait of Moses holding the 10 Commandments, he draws musical notes on the tablets. Bruce is unable to write words, but he somehow captures their importance by drawing musical notes. Bruce's drawings of the 10 Commandments can inspire contemplation. They might seem to be simple, naive artwork, and yet these drawings reveal that, quote, "He has the gift of intuitively grasping the essence of his subject and of being able to express it in his art."